A sword, a sword. God's message came to me, son of man, now face Jerusalem and let the message roll out against the sanctuary. Prophesy against the land of Israel. Say, God's message, I'm against you. I'm pulling my sword from its sheath and killing both the wicked and the righteous. It sounds like today's news because I'm treating everyone the same, the good and bad. Everyone from south to north is going to feel my sword. Everyone will know that I mean business. So, son of man, groan, double up in pain, make a scene. When they ask, why all this groaning, this carrying on, say, because of the news that's coming, it'll knock the breath out of everyone. Hearts will stop cold, knees turn to rubber. Yes, it's coming. No stopping. Decree of God the Master. God's message, son of man, prophesy. Tell them the Master says, a sword, razor sharpened, polished, sharpened to kill, polished to flash like lightning. My child, you despise the scepter of Judah by worshiping every tree idol. The sword is made to glisten, to be held and brandished. It's sharpened and polished, ready to be brandished by the killer. Yell out and wail, son of man, the sword is against my people, the princes of Israel, and my people abandoned to the sword. Wring your hands, tear out your hair. Testing comes. Why have you despised discipline? You can't get around it, decree of God the Master. So prophesy, son of man, clap your hands, get their attention. Tell them that the sword's coming down once, twice, 3 times. It's a sword to kill, a sword to massacre, a sword relentless, a sword inescapable. People collapsing right and left, going down like dominoes. I've stationed a murderous sword at every gate in the city, flashing like lightning, brandished murderously. Cut to the right, thrust to the left, murderous, sharp-edged sword. Then I'll clap my hands, a signal that my anger is spent. I, God, have spoken. God's message came to me, son of man, lay out 2 roads for the sword of the king of Babylon to take. Start them from the same place. Place a signpost at the beginning of each road. Post one sign to mark the road of the sword to Rabbah of the Ammonites. Post the other to mark the road to Judah and Fort Jerusalem. The king of Babylon stands at the fork in the road, and he decides by divination which of the 2 roads to take. He draws straws. He throws God dice. He examines a goat liver. He opens his right hand. The omen says, head for Jerusalem. So he's on his way with battering rams, roused to kill, sounding the battle cry, pounding down city gates, building siege works. To the Judah leaders who themselves have sworn oaths, it will seem like a false divination, but he will remind them of their guilt, and so they'll be captured. So this is what God, the Master, says, because your sin is now out in the open, so everyone can see what you have been doing, you'll be taken captive. O Zedekiah, blasphemous and evil prince of Israel, time's up. It's punishment, payday. God says, take your royal crown off your head. No more business as usual. The underdog will be promoted and the top dog will be demoted. Ruins, ruins, ruins. I'll turn the whole place into ruins, and ruins it will remain until the one comes who has a right to it, and I'll give it to him. But son of man, your job is to prophesy. Tell them this is the message from God the Master against the Ammonites and against their cruel taunts. A sword, bared to kill, sharp as a razor, flashing like lightning, despite false propaganda circulated in Ammon. The sword will sever Ammonite necks, for whom it's punishment, payday. Return the sword to the sheath. I'll judge you in your home country, in the land where you grew up. I'll empty out my wrath on you, breathe hot anger down your neck. I'll give you to vicious men, skilled in torture. You'll end up as a stove wood. Corpses will litter your land. Not so much as a memory will be left of you. I, God, have said so. Ezekiel 22, the scarecrow of the nations. God's message came to me, son of man, are you going to judge this bloody city or not? Come now, you're going to judge her. Do it. Face her with all her outrageous obscenities. Tell her, this is what God says, the Master says. You're a city murderous at the core, just asking for punishment. You're a city obsessed with no God idols, making yourselves filthy. In all your killing, you've piled up guilt. In all your idol making, you've become filthy. You forced a premature end to your existence. I'll put you on exhibit as the scarecrow of the nations, the world's worst joke. From far and near, they'll deride you as infamous in filth, notorious for chaos. Your leaders, the princes of Israel among you, compete in crime. Your community that's insolent to parents, abusive to outsiders, oppressive against orphans and widows. You treat my holy things with contempt and desecrate my Sabbaths. You have people spreading lies and spilling blood, flocking to the hills, to the sex shrines, and fornicating unrestrained. Incest is common. Men force themselves on women regardless of whether they're ready or willing. Sex is now anarchy. Anyone is fair game. Neighbor, daughter-in-law, sister. Murder is for hire. Usury is rampant. Extortion is commonplace. And you've forgotten me, decree of God the Master. Now look, I've clapped my hands, calling everyone's attention to your rapacious greed and your bloody brutalities. Can you stick with it? Will you be able to keep at this once I start dealing with you? I, God, have spoken. I'll put an end to this. I'll throw you out to the four winds. I'll scatter you all over the world. I'll put a full stop to your filthy living. You will be defiled, spattered with your own mud in your own eyes of spattered with your own mud in the eyes of the nations, and you'll recognize that I am God. God's message came to me, son of man, the people of Israel are slag to me, the useless byproduct of refined copper, tin, iron, and lead left at the smelter, a worthless slag heap. So tell them, God the Master has spoken, because you've all become worthless slag. You're on notice. I'll assemble you in Jerusalem. As men gather silver, copper, iron, lead, and tin into a furnace and blow fire on it to melt it down, so in my wrath I'll gather you and melt you down. I'll blow on you with the fire of my wrath and melt you down in the furnace. As silver is melted, you'll be melted down. That should get through to you. Then you'll recognize that I, God, have left my wrath loose on you. God's message came to me, son of man, tell her, you're a land that during the time I was angry with you got no rain, not so much as a spring shower. The leaders among you became desperate, like roaring, ravaging lions, killing indiscriminately. They grabbed and looted, leaving windows in their wake. Your priests violated my laws and desecrated my holy things. They can't tell the difference between sacred and secular. They tell people there's no difference between right and wrong. They're contemptuous of my holy Sabbaths, profaning me by trying to pull me down to their level. Your politicians are like wolves, prowling and killing and rapaciously taking whatever they want. Your preachers cover up for the politicians by pretending to have received visions and special revelations. They say, this is what God, the Master, says, when God hasn't said so much as one word. Extortion is rife. Robbery is epidemic. The poor and needy are abused. Outsiders are kicked around at will with no access to justice. I look for someone to stand up for me against all this, to repair the defenses of the city, to take a stand for me and stand in the gap to protect this land so I wouldn't have to destroy it. I couldn't find anyone, not one. So I'll empty out my wrath on them, burn them to a crisp with my hot anger, serve them with the consequences of all they've done. Decree of God, the Master. Ezekiel 23, wild with lust. God's message came to me, son of man, there were two women, daughters of the same mother. They became whores in Egypt, whores from a young age. Their breasts were fondled, their young bosoms caressed. The older sister was named Oholah. The younger was Oholibah. They were my daughters, and they gave birth to sons and daughters. Oholah is Samaria, and Oholibah is Jerusalem. Oholah started whoring while she was still mine. She lusted after Assyrians as lovers, military men smartly uniformed in blue, ambassadors and governors, good-looking young men mounted on fine horses. Her lust was unrestrained. She was a whore to the Assyrian elite. She compounded her filth with idols of those to whom she gave herself in lust. She never slowed down. The whoring she began while young in Egypt, she continued, sleeping with men who played with her breasts and spent their lust on her. So I left her to her Assyrian lovers, for whom she was obsessed with lust. They ripped off her clothes, took away her children, and then the final indignity killed her. Among women, her name became shame, history's judgment on her. Her sister Oholibah saw all this, but she became even worse than her sister in lust and whoring, if you can believe it. She also went crazy with lust for Assyrians, ambassadors and governors, military men smartly dressed and mounted on fine horses, the Assyrian elite. And I saw that she also had become incredibly filthy. Both women followed the same path, but Oholibah surpassed her sister. When she saw figures of Babylonians carved in relief on the walls and painted red fancy belts around their waists, elaborate turbans on their heads, all of them looking important, famous Babylonians, she went wild with lust and sent invitations to them in Babylon. The Babylonians came on the run, fornicated with her, made her dirty inside and out. When they had thoroughly debased her, she lost interest in them, and she went public with her fornication. She exhibited her sex to the world. I turned my back on her as I had on her sister, but that didn't slow her down. She went at her whoring harder than ever. She remembered when she was young, just starting out as a whore in Egypt. That whetted her appetite for more virile, vulgar, and violent lovers. Stallions obsessive in their lust. She longed for the sexual prowess of her youth back in Egypt, where her firm young breasts were caressed and fondled. Therefore, Oholibah, this is the message from God the Master, I will incite your old lovers against you, lovers you got tired of and left in disgust. I'll bring them against you from every direction. Babylonians and all the Chaldeans, Pekod, Shoah, and Koah, and all the Assyrians. Good-looking young men, ambassadors and governors, elite officers and celebrities, all of them mounted on fine-spirited horses. They'll come down on you out of the north, armed to the teeth, bringing chariots and troops from all sides. I'll turn over the task of judgment to them. They'll punish you according to their rules. I'll stand totally and relentlessly against you as they rip into you furiously. They'll mutilate you, cutting off your ears, nose, killing at random. They'll enslave your children, and anybody left over will be burned. They'll rip off your clothes and steal your jewelry. I'll put a stop to your sluttish sex, the whoring life you began in Egypt. You won't look on whoring with fondness anymore. You won't think back on Egypt with stars in your eyes. A message from God the Master. I'm at the point of abandoning you to those who hate. You hate, to those by whom you're repulsed. They'll treat you hatefully, leave you publicly naked, your whore's body exposed in the cruel glare of the sun. Your sluttish lust will be exposed. Your lust has brought you to this condition because you whored with pagan nations and made yourself filthy with their no-God idols. You copied the life of your sister. Now I'll let you drink the cup she drank. This is the message of God the Master. You'll drink your sister's cup, a cup canyon deep and ocean wide. You'll be shunned and taunted. As you drink from that cup full to the brim, you'll be falling down drunk and tears will flow. As you drink from that cup titanic with terror. It's the cup your sister Samaria. You'll drink it dry, then smash it to bits and eat the pieces and end up tearing at your breasts. I've given the word, decree of God the Master. Therefore, God the Master says, because you've forgotten all about me, pushing me into the background, you must now pay for what you've done. Pay for your sluttish sex and whoring life. Then God said to me, son of man, will you confront Aholah and Holabah with what they've done? Make them face their outrageous obscenities ranging from adultery to murder. They committed adultery with their no-God idols, sacrificed the children they bore me in order to feed their idols. And there is also this, they defiled my holy sanctuary and desecrated my holy Sabbaths. The same day that they sacrificed their children to their idols, they walked into my sanctuary and defiled it. That's what they did in my house. Furthermore, they even sent out invitations by a special messenger to men far away, and sure enough, they came. They bathed themselves, put on makeup and provocative lingerie, lingerie. They reclined on a sumptuous bed, aromatic with incense and oils. My incense and oils. The crowd gathered, jostling and pushing a drunken rabble. They adorned the sisters with bracelets on their arms and tiaras on their heads. I said, she's burned out on sex, but that didn't stop them. They kept banging on her doors night and day as men do when they're after a whore. That's how they use Aholah and Holabah, the worn out whores. Righteous men will pronounce judgment on them, giving out sentences for adultery and murder. That was their life work, adultery and murder. God says, let a mob loose on them, terror, plunder. Let the mob stone them and hack them to pieces. Jesus, have mercy. Kill all their children, burn down their houses. I'll put an end to sluttish sex in this country so that all women will be well warned not to copy you. You'll pay the price for all your obsessive sex. You'll pay in full for your promiscuous affairs with idols, and you'll realize that I'm God the Master. My Lord, this